Part 4. I'm not prepared for this intense bonding yet. She attempted to progress further this morning, but I resisted her advances. I require a complete understanding of the situation before I decide whether I want to rekindle anything. That's my current stance, though my feelings may change tomorrow morning when I see that person flaunting themselves in front of me. You're receiving excellent advice from everyone here. It may be tough to digest, but it's crucial to keep an open mind. I have confidence in the people in this community. They possess a deep understanding of the subject matter. Even though their words may provoke frustration, take some time to reflect on their perspective. They're pushing you to think critically and make informed decisions. Delve deep within yourself and embrace that path. It's the most favorable course of action. I'm frustrated, but not with anyone in this community. I understand that each person's input is shaped by their individual personalities and experiences. Having read numerous other threads, I've seen that many individuals here are still with their partners despite facing more severe challenges. No one here will pressure me into a decision. The outcome of this situation will be determined by my wife and me, not by well-intentioned advice, no matter how valuable it may be. People handle these situations differently. You initially leaned towards divorce, then eased off when you noticed her efforts to mend things. More often, we observe people adopting a save the marriage at all costs approach at the beginning. Your approach worked well for you and helped you break free from the emotional fog earlier than most. You're pretty much spot on with your assessment. I can't say I was in a specific mode, but what you mentioned is pretty darn close. One thing I'm absolutely certain about is that I'm not in a save the marriage at any cost mode. However, I'm also not in a divorce and burn the house down without thoroughly considering all the consequences mindset. To draw a sports analogy, some people can push through the pain with the same injury that others cannot. I could have divorce papers delivered to her within hours, and there would be no need to request a polygraph. Instead, I'd inquire about her reasons once more for wanting to remain married and what she plans to do to make it work. If she doesn't provide satisfactory answers, I'll outline how things are going to proceed. At this moment, I'd wager that she would be willing to take a polygraph without hesitation, unless she's withholding information. I'm against targeting the other person while letting the wife off the hook. Both parties were involved, and there should be significant consequences for both or none at all. While we may blame him, your wife is equally responsible. It's unfair for her life to remain unscathed while his is in ruins. This might be one of the reasons I have disagreements with R. I'll say it again, take what's beneficial and disregard the rest. I don't believe you're not suffering just because you're not sharing every sleepless moment with us here at this forum. Every situation, despite similarities, is unique. This forum is emotionally charged, and some people may be perturbed that you're not sharing every detail of your anguish. Many individuals like you cease posting early on due to the criticism they face. I appreciate that you found a balance between self-discovery and seeking advice. That's precisely why, considering his family situation, my anger and apprehension are directed towards my wife. The guy is 2,000 miles away, and as you mentioned, my worry is that there might not be another or a prior recipient of what you refer to as easy intimacy. Once more, take what you find useful and disregard the rest. I believe you're experiencing pain, even if you're not recounting every restless moment with us here at Forum. While there are commonalities in many situations, each one is unique. This forum is charged with strong emotions, and some individuals may be perturbed by your measured approach. Many people in situations similar to yours tend to disengage from posting early on due to the criticism they encounter. I appreciate that you're finding a balance between self-discovery and seeking advice. As an experienced member, I want to reassure you that you're doing well, and ultimately, you'll be fine regardless of the path you choose. Your decision not to insist on your wife being on her knees begging doesn't make you weak or someone who's avoiding the situation. I'll be out of town for a week, but you and your loved ones will be in my thoughts and prayers. Stay strong. I'd like to express my gratitude. I'm not sure why anyone would assume that your wife is having a great time. She's sleeping in a guest room, barely communicating with her husband except for questions, has been subjected to harsh words from the other man's spouse, and knows that you have the power to take decisive action. I may not have listed all the apologies she's made, and that could be my oversight, but it's important to note that she hasn't resisted any of my requests thus far. If I ever decide to leave the forum, it won't be because I'm afraid of anyone's opinions. Everyone has their own perspective. Once again, thank you for your support. If there are individuals out there who consider me the wimp of the year because I haven't filed for divorce, evicted her, shared my situation with everyone I know, and taken action against the other man and his family, then I suppose I'll embrace that label. I should note, though, that I would have no reservations about taking all those steps if I believed this affair was still ongoing or if I discovered that it is. Now, for those who advocate for immediate, drastic measures and are dissatisfied with my approach, consider a thread on reconciliation, where a gentleman recently found his wife, with whom he believed he was in the process of reconciliation, wearing lacy lingerie and disappearing with the other man just 2 nights ago. He's describing it as a setback, and I think he might be in greater need of the destroy the world advice right now. Nevertheless, I can handle the feedback, and I'm genuinely appreciative of everyone trying to assist me. Remaining composed and making reasoned decisions during a crisis is the hallmark of true resilience and strength. Your choices are sound and not based on self-deception, and I commend you for them. The most effective way to dispel uncertainties about the future is to insist on an immediate polygraph and subsequent annual tests. Rest assured, there will be a polygraph in the near future, and there will be multiple ones annually. I'm even contemplating having them every quarter for the first year, with no concern for the cost. You've certainly made significant progress, but ultimately it's unlikely that anything will change. In all likelihood, his wife will return to their bedroom, and he will set aside thoughts of divorce. The other man will maintain his family and job, and his wife will also retain her job and family. The other man and the wayward wife will likely continue their meetings every 6 weeks, just as they did before. Either every expert is mistaken about the necessity of no contact, or this endeavor is doomed to failure regardless. The probability of succeeding in this situation, even when following all the right steps, makes it challenging to comprehend the reasoning behind encouraging someone to engage in the number one action required. Despite the seeming inevitability of failure, you've taken the time to offer assistance, and for that, I'll respond. My wife will regain all those privileges if she demonstrates her worthiness through her actions. If she proves to be genuinely remorseful, why shouldn't she have those benefits? On the other hand, if her actions reveal a lack of remorse, she will receive none of them, and the same applies to the other man. It seems premature to assume that his wife will capitulate entirely, and it's also early to conclude that given his exposure, he will refrain from further transgressions. You're absolutely right about the 6-week time frame. If she undergoes regular polygraph tests and knows that they'll happen, it leaves 2 possibilities. Either she becomes exceptionally skilled like James Bond and beats the test every time, or the revival of the affair would likely be short-lived, wouldn't it? So, it's somewhat of an assumption that both wayward spouses are either too naive or too infatuated to figure that out. I must say that I'm not as pessimistic as you, but I also don't fall into the reconciliation at all costs camp that's been mentioned. You're doing an admirable job. As you've observed, the opinions here vary widely, but they all stem from a desire to assist you in navigating this difficult situation in the way each poster believes is best. It's evident that you recognize this and take it in the spirit of support. Well done. Now I have a few questions. Has she initiated a conversation with you to discuss her affair more comprehensively? Is she willing to answer your questions openly? Does she express a desire to continue the marriage? Has she explicitly conveyed this? And if so, has she articulated her reasons for wanting to stay? Is she open to the idea of seeking individual counseling? What about you? I strongly recommend considering this as well. Beyond any mandatory actions, what other steps is she taking to demonstrate her commitment to you and your marriage? In other words, what is she prepared to do voluntarily? For instance, quitting her job may not be a feasible solution for all the reasons you've mentioned, but she should be willing to consider such steps. Here are a few additional points. Consider getting sleep aids and anxiety medication if you feel it's necessary. I personally used. Be cautious about letting anger take over. It's natural to feel angry, but it's important to keep it in check. I strongly recommend individual counseling. I understand if I'm being insistent. If possible, lean on your brother for support. Having that kind of support can be invaluable. Keep your commitment to the polygraph. Regarding intimacy, understand that at this stage, it may be a form of manipulation on her part. She may not even realize it, but it could be a way for her to demonstrate her desire to remain close to you. However, it's still a form of manipulation. I'm not suggesting that you should avoid intimacy, but be aware of its underlying motivation. One of the most significant challenges for a betrayed spouse, BS, is reconciling the feelings of love for your spouse with what they did and the pain they caused. This emotional turmoil creates a roller coaster of emotions, making it incredibly challenging to make rational, level-headed decisions amidst this chaos. Given all the challenges you've faced, you're handling things remarkably well. Stay the course. I'm here to answer your questions, so please continue with me. 1. She has been willing to answer all my questions so far, but I have many more inquiries to pose. This weekend, we'll have more conversations. She has never mentioned leaving me for the other man, and if she were to contemplate leaving after a few encounters, that's a decision she's free to make. 2. There's no question that she is determined to remain in the marriage. I want to be sensitive in how I phrase this, so please take it in the right context. Unlike a stay-at-home mum with young children, she has her own income, investments and assets that would enable her to be financially independent if she no longer wanted to be married to me. I haven't delved deeply into the why conversation yet, but I'm working my way there. It's worth noting that the other man in this situation appears to have reacted differently from the negative other man in your wife's case, who seemed content and desired your wife to leave you. There haven't been any such requests in this scenario, or I might have missed them. Additionally, my wife has no intention of taking on the responsibility of 3 children, either full-time or part-time. I'm convinced that this is not a love affair. 3. I haven't pursued therapy for myself yet. If I uncover more lies, discover additional involvement with the other man, or if there are breaches of our agreements, she can seek individual counseling on her own time. 4. This situation is still fresh, and at the moment I'm seething with anger. I have an appointment with my physician tomorrow to discuss some medication. To be honest, I've never been a big fan of therapists. We have friends who've had mixed experiences with them, some finding help and others not, and not all related to infidelity. If I reach a point where I feel I'm making no progress, I won't resist the idea. Currently, I'm managing to function, and I'm monitoring my blood pressure daily. I've never been a smoker, and I only drink socially. On the contrary, she's crying quite a bit every time our paths cross, and I shed tears too, but who wouldn't in this situation? 5. My wayward wife seems uncertain about what to do. She keeps asking questions, offering apologies, and I anticipate discussing the polygraph, likely this weekend. She's expressed a desire for intimacy, and while I don't believe it's a calculated strategy she's consciously thought out, like, if I satisfy him sexually, he'll be content. I do think women generally understand how much men are motivated by sex. Thus, she may feel it's the most effective way to bridge the emotional gap. It's challenging for me to resist, so I do acknowledge your point about manipulation. I appreciate you taking the time to outline those points constructively. I've been following your thread, but haven't posted until now. I truly admire your approach to this situation. We all understand just how tough and painful it is. Consider this a virtual high five from me. Keep up the great work. I understand that this is an incredibly painful experience, and it's normal to question whether you deserve any accolades. Nonetheless, you're doing your best to navigate through this complex situation. One of us in this forum has it right. Don't dwell on the advice from posters who advocate for a nuclear approach with your wife. You're doing an excellent job managing this difficult situation. When we unleashed the atomic bomb on Japan, it was an irreversible action. Going nuclear may seem tempting, but it's a one-time deal. It's still a possibility, but I require more distressing revelations to reach that point. Bear in mind that I'm in the process of compiling my list of questions. It's challenging to focus and not jump around. Well, it wasn't exactly what I'd call a pleasant weekend. It took the entire weekend because I needed to take numerous breaks. I wanted to absorb everything gradually instead of attempting to process the entire dose in one continuous conversation. I'd like to begin by expressing my belief that providing a detailed account of the recent affair I just discovered is unnecessary, as it has come to an end. I am confident in this because there is now an open line of communication between the other man's wife and me. Both parties involved have acknowledged their actions and have essentially put an end to it. I understand that some of you may remain convinced that despite the steps I've taken, they might rekindle their involvement if they are in close proximity. I respect your perspective, but I don't believe there's anything I can do or say to change your minds, and I won't attempt to do so. Let's agree to respectfully disagree on this point. It's important to clarify that this does not mean I am in a reconciliation at all costs mode. Instead, it signifies that unless any other negative revelations come to light, I am willing to explore the possibility of repairing some of the damage that has been done. To rephrase, I am open to the idea that she can work on repairing the damage because I bear no responsibility for causing it. I also believe that there are various types of affairs, and understanding the specific nature of a wife's affair is crucial, as the strategies and approaches for reconciliation will vary. A one-time alcohol-fueled encounter with a bartender on a girls' night out will have different consequences compared to a rekindled affair lasting 2 years with a former high school flame. It's essential to consider if it was an exit affair, a revenge affair, or if she's a serial cheater seeking constant external validation to compensate for what she perceives as missing in her marriage, whether real or imagined, among other possibilities. In this case, it's clear that it was not an exit affair. My wife does not wish for a divorce, and her intention was not to get caught to prompt a divorce. This affair does not qualify as a long-term affair with only 6 encounters, and not all of these encounters took place in the same location. At this stage, she cannot be labeled as a serial cheater. Furthermore, it doesn't fit the category of a one-night stand, even though it initially started in a similar manner. As pointed out, each case is unique, which is why, in my opinion, navigating through this situation can be so perplexing. Let me discuss the topic of their sexual encounters in a general manner. I won't go into explicit detail, similar to how he did, regarding the specific acts they engaged in. My wife and I have explored a wide range of asexual experiences, fulfilling many of my desires and preferences. Unless he introduced something akin to the 50 Shades of Grey routine, there's nothing she did with him that she hasn't done with me. I don't concern myself with the size of his genitals. I've been in locker rooms for much of my life, and based on what I've observed, I have no reason to feel inadequate in that department, so there's no need for comparisons. In essence, what I'm conveying is that she found pleasure in their sexual encounters, and if she had expressed otherwise, I wouldn't have believed it. I highly doubt that if I were to engage in sexual activity with another woman, I would have a negative experience. This affair was a result of an opportune moment rather than a conscious decision to give in to temptation, and it only takes one such moment to occur. I hold the belief that not every person who crosses this line should be condemned and cast aside. I also don't think that every individual who engages in infidelity is inherently and irredeemably morally corrupt, regardless of the reasons or circumstances. If that were the case, there would be no need for forums like this one. In such a scenario, everyone would simply head straight to divorce court without any room for discussion or reflection. I want to clarify that I'm not here to defend her actions, and she hasn't attempted to place blame on me for anything. She's an attractive woman in her mid-40s who often appears to be in her early 30s, and she received attention from a hunky guy a decade her junior, which she encouraged. While I don't want to label her as vulnerable, I did mention that our relationship had suffered due to our respective travel schedules, more so on my part than hers. As an interesting side note, if you were to see a picture of Mr. Pretty Boy's wife, you'd likely find it surprising, given that his wife looks like a Miss America contestant. A significant portion of my inquiries revolved around determining whether this was the first and only instance of such an encounter, and she insists that it was. However, she did disclose that on 2 occasions in the past 2 years, she allowed a man who approached her in a hotel to buy her dinner. It's worth noting that she didn't have to share this information, and she maintains that she never had any further contact with either of those individuals. My wife is a highly intelligent individual working in sales, which makes her skilled at anticipating objections. At the end of our conversation, she acknowledged that she understands my skepticism and mentioned that I'm free to review phone records dating back as far as they are available if it would bring me peace of mind. She assured me that I could take any necessary steps. Then she voiced what I was contemplating. She conveyed that personally she couldn't think of a more convincing way to assure me of her honesty than to undergo a polygraph test. She expressed a strong desire to take this step to demonstrate the truthfulness of her statements, not only concerning Mr. Pretty Boy, but also regarding the dinners. It's worth noting that I had dinner with a woman I met on a flight about 8 months ago at the same hotel, as she was in the same industry as me. Importantly, I didn't pursue a sexual relationship with her or maintain any further contact. We had an extensive discussion about her job. She expressed her reluctance to quit unless she can secure a position near her current salary with significantly reduced travel. In an effort to reassure me, she stated her willingness to undergo a polygraph examination each time she needs to attend a meeting where the other man is present. This raises the question, why would she offer to take a polygraph if she intended to engage in further indiscretions with him? I made it clear that her friend, who has been causing problems, needs to be removed from her life, and we should have a conversation about anyone else who might be aware of the situation. Regarding consequences, I believe that agreeing to submit to a polygraph, a process that involves being connected to a machine, is an uncomfortable and unpleasant prospect. To agree to do it multiple times is an even more significant commitment. Additionally, learning that I have consulted with an attorney serves as a consequential development in this situation. I'm currently quite fatigued. I've dedicated the majority of this weekend to discussing some very challenging issues, and I may not be prompt in responding to any straightforward or simple matters. I cannot reverse the actions she has taken. I'm extremely angry about it, but she made her choices out of her own desires, not because of anything I did. I firmly believe that anyone is capable of making similar regrettable decisions. We simply prefer to think that we and our partners would never do such things. That's what makes this situation so difficult to accept. We still have a long way to go, and I don't possess a crystal ball to predict the future. However, from our conversations this weekend, it seems like she comprehends the gravity of the situation, as it's commonly expressed here. Now, she must demonstrate it through her actions. We're not asserting that the affair will resume, but it will remain a possibility. We're not suggesting a resurgence of the affair, but the potential is always there. The significant issue that often arises is that it may trigger memories of the initial discovery D-Day every 6 weeks, which is quite common. My opinions are not intended to be harsh. These upcoming trips will be quite challenging for you. Anything can happen. This entire situation has proven that to me. The recurrence every 6 weeks? I'll have her travel plans and reservations in advance. I've never had that before, nor have I ever requested it. None of this was done during our meetings. They were exceptionally cautious, even avoiding using the same vehicles or taxis to the airport. Afterward, they would individually retrace their steps to an airport hotel. My way out from that difficult situation, if necessary, is through a polygraph test. Until she declines that, I won't label it as a hellish experience. Opportunity. They perceive an opening, a chance to engage in something without being discovered. That describes your wife. She desired it and believed she wouldn't be caught. Temptation, opportunity, and the belief they can evade detection. It's not all that dissimilar from a common embezzler. My wife was no different, and many others in this group share similar experiences. Are you familiar with the crime opportunity theory? There's substantial scientific research indicating that many crimes occur primarily due to the presence of an opportunity. However, not all opportunities lead to criminal acts. An individual willing to commit the act is also necessary, and criminals are less likely to act if they fear being caught. For instance, they won't steal a car if a police car is right behind it. Regarding the future, many cheaters initially intend to remain faithful, but temptation arises, opportunities present themselves, and the belief that they can avoid detection emerges. Over time, the memory of pain and hurtfulness may fade. Some individuals may never cheat again, while others might. None of us can predict with certainty whether our partners will repeat their actions. It's possible that my wife could cheat again. I don't believe she would, but then again, I didn't think she would the first time. You expressed that sentiment quite effectively. I believe this is the closest to how I feel about it that can be articulated, particularly the uncertainty that none of us can foresee whether they might repeat their actions. You don't believe your wife will. At this moment, neither do I. Only time will reveal the truth, and my vigilance is heightened. I would be more inclined to label this as a long-term affair if they were frequently meeting up in the same city. Call it whatever you prefer. I've seen threads here with an abundance of texts, videos, and phone calls, while our situation doesn't come close to that level of communication. They also declined some opportunities to meet the other person. There were no contrived trips to rendezvous with the other man in between. I won't quibble over terminology. Call it whatever you like. I mentioned it in my post, opportunity and poor choices. Very few individuals believe they will be discovered. Likely, 75% or more of the wayward spouses here would not face consequences if they cheated once and never repeated the act. Thank you for the update. What a difficult weekend it must have been. I'm truly sorry that you had to endure that. A few direct questions. I understand they may sound blunt, but it's not meant to be harsh. Did she provide any reasons for her decision to cheat on you 6 times? What led her to believe that her actions were acceptable? Was it simply because she desired to and believed she could avoid detection? In that case, what's to stop her from being more cautious in the future? Is the threat of a polygraph the only deterrent? A profound question arises. If the only thing preventing her from engaging in extramarital relations is the fear of a polygraph test, what does this reveal about her perception of her marriage to you? What insights does it provide about the state of your marriage? Is it appropriate to consider it a marriage when the sole deterrent against one spouse betraying the other is a polygraph test? Essentially, is there more to her reasons than simply succumbing to temptation, which might explain a one-night stand? Engaging in this 6 times is a series of choices and life decisions. My intention with these questions is not to upset you, but to help you clearly identify the underlying factors and decision-making points as you contemplate your future, whether with or without her. Additionally, I want to emphasize this. I believe we are all capable of making poor choices, but our actions define us and shape our character. You remained faithful while she did not. Whether it's a matter of personal integrity, morals, religious values, honor, or even simple common sense. Many of us encountered opportunities to cheat, but we chose not to. It's not about our potential for wrongdoing, but rather about the choices we make that truly matter. No need to worry about being harsh. I'll do my best to provide answers. She did explain her reasons. The first time it was about receiving ego boosts and attention from a younger, attractive man who was giving her exclusive attention and not showing interest in other women. If he had been distant, perhaps 2,000 miles away and unavailable, it might have ended there. But that wasn't the case. After the first time, it became easier. It was much simpler than your situation, where your wife had to come home to you every night and compartmentalize. In all cases but one, I was out of town when she returned home. She could have potentially engaged in more encounters, but she chose not to. Why did she believe it was acceptable? She didn't genuinely think it was okay. She simply wanted to do it. We went through the midlife crisis phase. She even told me that it was okay if I felt the need to do the same, but not to inform her about it. She expressed her surprise that I hadn't done something similar. I became extremely upset when she said that and left for a few hours. So, in essence, my understanding is, as I mentioned earlier, she engaged in it because she desired the excitement and fun, somewhat akin to what I gathered from the Space Ghost thread regarding his wife. I suppose your wife believed she was in love or some similar sentiment, but that's not the situation here. If you were acquainted with my wife, you'd realize that, at this point in her life, she has no interest in taking on the role of a mother to 3 young children. Was it purely because she desired to do it and believed she could evade detection? I suppose I addressed parts of this in my previous responses. As I mentioned before, how many cheaters genuinely believe they will be caught? It's challenging to gauge the extent to which her friend's influence affected her, and I don't want to place blame on someone else. She was hearing daily that it was acceptable to have some flings, and that what I didn't know wouldn't hurt me. When I inquired about what led her to believe I might allow her to continue, she provided a convoluted response, suggesting that she was trying to engage me in a conversation to determine if I had done something similar and to provoke me. It certainly did provoke me. I pressed her further about what she would have done if I had been indecisive about it. She claims and insists that the other man was getting nervous, and it likely wouldn't have continued much longer. While that may sound like an excuse, based on his actions during all of this, he hasn't shown any desire to continue the affair. It seems he's focused on repairing his own marriage. Returning to your original question, the belief that they can avoid being caught is a significant factor in their decision to continue. It's true that if your brother hadn't been in the right place at the right time, your wife might still be spending her afternoons with the other man. Who can really say for sure? What's to prevent her from being more cautious in the future? Is the threat of a polygraph the deterrent? The reality is that she doesn't need to be cautious in the future. I'm confident that this other man is no longer a part of the equation. So, looking ahead, I have 2 options. The first is blind trust, which is simply not happening. The second is the polygraph, which, I should mention, my wife brought up before I did. How cautious does she really need to be when engaging with someone 500 miles away from home while I'm on the opposite end of the country? Moreover, what good would a private investigator do with this other man if I thought there was a chance of a reoccurrence? A private investigator can likely only determine if they arrive or leave a hotel together, but not what transpires inside. I realized early on that if I chose to stay married, the polygraph would be the sole long-term solution. As for how long it will continue, only time will tell. In essence, is there more behind her reasons than simply failing to resist temptation, as that explanation might suffice for a one-night stand? The 6 instances involve deliberate choices and significant life decisions. All wayward spouses make these life-altering choices. Your wife made the choice each time she went to volunteer, and Space Ghost's wife made the choice each time he left town. This situation isn't concluded. While I have what everyone refers to as total transparency, we're all aware that if someone truly wishes to do something wrong, they can usually find a way. Once again, if my wife worked daily with this other man, I'd have her car bugged, the house monitored, and a professional surveillance team watching her closely for a while. In my scenario, all of those precautions would be futile without the polygraph. The intention behind my questions is not to upset you. I'm not angered. I hope that none of my responses upset you or touched a nerve when I mentioned your wife. However, the question remains. What about 5 to 10 years down the road? Will she still feel entitled to just have sex with someone else? By then, your 2 kids will likely have become the professionals they're currently studying to be. Both of you will be significantly more financially stable, to the point where money won't be a concern, and you'll have aged while she still possesses those striking looks. If I had any inkling of what the next 5 to 10 years would hold, I'd be so prosperous I might as well rule the world. A decade ago, I would have never imagined I'd find myself posting on an infidelity forum. The financial aspect is not the sole concern here. Even if my wife were to cease working tomorrow, my kids would have all the financial support they need to pursue their aspirations. However, it's a substantial amount of money to walk away from, and she's not the type to sit idly at home. I do believe that at some point she might consider a different job with less or no travel, if she can find one. She hasn't ruled that out. You're absolutely right. A wife can engage in extramarital affairs anywhere on the planet. A woman can find opportunities for such encounters even at the grocery store. So it's hard for me to contemplate the next 5 or 10 years right now. While it's true that you'll be aging and she'll likely retain her striking looks, I don't consider myself a turnip either, and I'm pleased that she looks good. I've always appreciated that. Moreover, it's worth noting that there are, without a doubt, women of average appearance who also engage in infidelity, right? In summary, when an opportunity for some fun presented itself, she acted upon it. This opportunity eventually transformed into a sense of entitlement, as she rationalized that you may have had your own opportunities and acted on them, so why shouldn't she also get it out of her system? Does she believe there's a sort of relationship scorecard that needs to be balanced? Furthermore, if it was so right for her to engage in this at the time, then why did she initially refuse to disclose the identity of the other person involved? Her initial actions suggested otherwise, even if she didn't outright refuse to end it. And if the line of thought is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, then why is she so concerned about your 2 kids discovering what occurred? Isn't this something that parents in midlife deal with quite often? It does seem like she's been running quite the rationalisation hamster wheel in her head. Are most wayward wives or wayward husbands actually guided by a rational thought process? I must have missed that memo. It seems like all the wayward wife who are thinking more clearly than mine are just eager to inform the kids. I'm genuinely perplexed by the insistence of some that I should dismantle every facet of her life, including her relationships with the children, her job, her connections with my entire family, and hers, if feasible, before even considering reconciliation, if it ever comes to that. It's as if they expect me to say, "Okay, honey, let's reconcile now." In this thread, there have been several instances where you've challenged a commenter for not recalling every detail of your situation or for disagreeing with you. Please remember that we've all been through this before, and we bring different perspectives and experiences to help you navigate this situation. All right, I'll start by addressing this one first, and then I'll respond to your points one by one. To begin, I make an effort to respond to most of the comments and recommendations. I find it puzzling that when I receive strong advice delivered in a manner that suggests I must be mistaken and have everything wrong, I'm not allowed to offer a counterpoint and express my perspective. Frankly, when you make a definitive and assertive statement to someone regarding such an emotional issue, it's essential to have the details correct. I do recognize that everyone here has gone through various forms of similar experiences, and that's what makes all of the opinions valuable and worth reading. I could easily disregard what I disagree with, but I'm striving to be respectful because if someone has taken the time to express their viewpoint, they deserve a response. Just as I may not fully agree with certain suggestions, some may not agree with my responses, and that's perfectly fine as well. What truly underscores my understanding of this dynamic is that I did read a significant portion of the Space Ghost thread. I observed the deep respect for his steadfast approach and commitment to his decisions. However, the thread continued for nearly 1,000 posts and over 40 pages, with some individuals still telling him that he was mistaken not to reconcile with his wife due to her tremendous remorse, which, incidentally, I didn't perceive until it was already too late. The initial piece of advice I received here was to expose the affair and bring it to a halt, with the quickest way being to reach out to the other man's wife. I believe I managed to do that in a relatively short period of time. I've also done my best to clarify why I haven't demanded that she resign immediately, yet I keep hearing assertions that she may get involved with him again. Following that, I was advised to obtain a timeline, and I accomplished that. I obtained the details about their sexual encounters, although that wasn't exactly a pleasant experience. Next, I've made an effort to determine whether this was the only affair, and I've arrived at the conclusion that I can't believe it without concrete verification. It's worth noting that my wife was the one who suggested the polygraph idea before I even brought it up, although she receives no recognition for it. I don't see many wayward wives willingly volunteering for a test that could potentially end their marriage with a single wrong answer. So, let's acknowledge that I might not be entirely pleased with some of the advice I've received, and similarly, some may not be satisfied with my responses. My role here isn't to offer apologies for disagreeing with those who criticize me. This is a process of give and take, and in case it's not already clear, I'm not the kind of person who only takes without giving. I recognize it's a flaw in my character. Now let me provide a response to a valid question. A. She has not shown any hesitation and has been willing to do everything and anything I've asked.